If this video found you today, something in your awareness has already shifted. You may not have language for it yet, but you have felt it. Reality has started looking sharper, almost too alive, as if the ordinary world has become a coded message waiting for you to notice it. A stranger's sentence lands with impossible timing. A shadow on the wall feels symbolic. A song begins exactly when your chest tightens. Even the silence around you feels intelligent. And deep down, you know this is not random. You are here because reality has started noticing you back. Maybe this has been happening for days, or maybe for years. You look at something simple. A clock, a face, a doorway, a line of text, and for one breath, it feels like the surface of life has turned transparent. You are not just seeing objects anymore. You are sensing patterns. You are not just hearing noise anymore. You are receiving signals. Something inside you has stopped accepting the old explanation that life is only mechanical, accidental, and fixed. A deeper part of you has begun to whisper, "There is more here than I was taught to see." That whisper is the opening of the quantum lens. It is not a physical lens, but a change in the way consciousness focuses. When the quantum lens opens, the world does not immediately explode into miracles. It becomes subtle first. You notice the energy behind a conversation. You feel the meaning beneath an ordinary delay. You sense that certain people, places, and choices carry a frequency your body recognizes before your mind can explain it. This is the beginning of conscious observation. Not looking harder, not forcing signs, but perceiving from a dimension within you that has been asleep. And this is why this message did not need to chase everyone. Millions of people could scroll past these words and feel nothing. They would call it another video, another idea, another strange title in an endless feed, but you stopped. Your awareness paused. Your nervous system recognized something before your thoughts decided whether to believe it. That pause matters. In the quantum field, attention is never empty. Attention is the first doorway through which possibility enters form. What you notice begins to gather energy. What you ignore begins to fade. And what you observe with presence begins to reveal itself. Most people think observation means watching what is already there, but the deeper truth is more powerful. Observation is participation. The way you look at your life affects the life that can appear before you. If you observe through fear, reality becomes a hallway of threats. If you observe through lack, every open door looks locked. If you observe through the old story, even new opportunities wear the face of the past. But when you observe through coherence, something changes. The same room feels wider. The same silence feels guided. The same problem begins to show a hidden exit. This is the hidden key of the quantum observer. You are not here to fight reality into submission. You are not here to beg the universe for proof. You are not here to perform perfect thoughts while your body still trembles with the old frequency. You are here to change the one who is observing, because the field does not only respond to what you want, it responds to who you are being while you want it. That is the part most people miss. They try to observe a new timeline while embodying the abandoned, rushed, doubtful version of themselves, but not you. Not anymore. Something in you is ready to notice reality like never before. Not with desperation, not with spiritual performance, but with a clear, calm, awakened presence. This is where your shift begins, not later, when circumstances finally become perfect, not someday, when every doubt disappears. It begins in the exact moment you realize your attention has been shaping your experience all along. Every repeated pattern, every familiar disappointment, every strange synchronicity, every sudden knowing was pointing toward this realization. You were never merely living inside reality. You were learning how to observe it. So stay with this. Do not let the old mind rush ahead and demand proof before it has listened. For the next few minutes, allow these words to move beneath thought, into the place where your observer was formed. You are about to see why the world keeps repeating certain patterns, why some moments feel strangely scripted, and why your attention may be the lighthouse, calling one reality closer while letting another dissolve. This is not about escaping life. This is about seeing life through the lens that was hidden inside you all along. And once that lens opens, nothing looks the same again. Most people move through life believing they are simply looking at what is already there. They wake up, open their eyes, check their phone, scan their room, look at their face in the mirror, and assume they are receiving reality exactly as it is. But that has never been the full truth. The moment your awareness touches anything, it begins to participate. You are not only seeing the world, you are selecting the meaning, the emotional charge, the possibility, and the version of yourself that will meet that world. This is the first secret of the quantum observer. Looking is passive. Observing is creative. Looking says, "This happened to me." Observing asks, "What am I collapsing this into?" Looking accepts the surface. Observing feels the field beneath the surface. When you look at a situation through fear, you do not merely notice danger, you train your nervous system to search for more evidence of danger. When you observe through possibility, you do not deny the challenge, you open a wider probability around it. Think about a moment when someone did not reply to your message. The old observer may have collapsed that silence into rejection, distance, abandonment, or proof that nothing ever works out for you. But another observer, a coherent observer, could look at the same silence and sense space, timing, protection, or simply the unknown. The event is the same. The collapse is different. This is why two people can live through the same circumstance and enter completely different timelines from it. Reality does not only give you events, it gives your consciousness raw material. Your attention is the force that shapes that raw material into experience. This is not about pretending pain is beautiful, or forcing yourself to smile at something that hurt you. That is spiritual performance. And your field can feel the difference. Quantum observation begins with honesty. It says, "This is what I feel, but I am not limited to the meaning my old self would assign to it." That single pause is powerful. In that pause, you stop feeding the automatic reality your past expects. Have you noticed how certain thoughts seem to call matching evidence toward them? You wake up expecting resistance, and every small delay feels like confirmation. You walk into a room believing you are unwanted, and your awareness only notices the cold face, the unanswered glance, the closed posture. You begin a project assuming it will fail, and suddenly every minor obstacle becomes prophecy. This is not because reality hates you. It is because the observer inside you has been trained to collect proof for the script it already believes. And when attention keeps collecting the same proof, the pattern thickens. It begins to feel solid, permanent, undeniable. This is how the observer loop disguises itself as truth. It does not say, "I am a loop." It says, "This is just how life is." It does not say, "You are repeating an old collapse." It says, "See, nothing changes." But listen carefully, the fact that you can notice the loop means you are already standing slightly outside it. The watcher has begun to wake. This is why your attention has weight. Imagine your awareness as a lighthouse moving across an ocean of possibilities. Wherever the light rests, waves begin to rise. They become visible, charged, available. If the lighthouse keeps turning toward danger, the ocean appears full of storms. If it keeps turning toward betrayal, every shadow looks like a warning. But if the light turns toward clarity, kindness, timing, and inner steadiness, a different ocean begins to answer. The possibilities were not absent, they were simply not illuminated by you. This does not mean you caused every difficult thing in your life. It does not mean pain is your fault, or that every wound appeared because you observed incorrectly. That is not the teaching here. The deeper teaching is gentler and far more empowering, even when you cannot choose what happens. You can begin choosing the state from which you observe what happens, and that state becomes the bridge between the reality you inherited and the reality you are now learning to enter. The old observer reacts instantly. It sees a delay and calls it rejection. It sees uncertainty and calls it danger. It sees another person's success and calls it evidence that there is not enough for you. The awakened observer slows the collapse. It breathes before deciding. It feels before judging. It lets the field remain open long enough for another meaning to appear. That is where power returns. Not in controlling every event, but in refusing to hand every event to the wounded interpreter inside you. You have already experienced this, even if you did not name it. There were moments when something that should have triggered you suddenly lost its grip. A sentence that would have wounded you passed through without becoming identity. A disappointment that once would have pulled you into days of overthinking became only information. A silence that used to feel like abandonment became space. In those moments, you were not weaker. You were more awake. You were observing without becoming the old collapse. This is the beginning of quantum freedom. Freedom does not always arrive as a dramatic miracle. Sometimes it arrives as 1 second of space between stimulus and reaction. 1 breath before the old story takes control. 1 quiet refusal to turn a neutral moment into proof of your unworthiness. The field responds to that space because space is where new probability can enter. If every moment is instantly filled with yesterday's interpretation, tomorrow has nowhere to land, so begin here. The next time reality presents you with something familiar, do not rush to call it by the old name. Do not say, "This always happens to me," before the moment has finished speaking. Do not collapse the unknown into the prison of memory. Pause. Let the quantum observer inside you step forward. Ask, what else could this mean? What else is trying to emerge? Who am I if I do not become my first reaction? That question is not small. It is a doorway. Every time you ask it sincerely, the automatic script weakens. The lighthouse of your attention turns. The ocean of possibility receives a new signal. You stop confirming the same reality with the same eyes. And when your eyes change, your world begins to reveal details it could not show the old observer. The person in front of you becomes more than a trigger. The obstacle becomes more than resistance. The delay becomes more than punishment. You are learning to see before the old self names what it sees. You are learning to observe before fear turns possibility into threat. And this is why your reality can begin changing immediately. Not because every circumstance obeys you, but because the one who meets each circumstance is no longer asleep. Stay with this awareness. The next truth goes even deeper. Your observation has not only shaped moments, it has been reading from an invisible script, and that script is ready to be seen. Once it is seen, it can no longer secretly command your field. Now that you have begun to see the difference between looking and observing, the next layer can reveal itself. Your reality has not only been shaped by moments of attention, it has been shaped by a hidden script running beneath those moments. This script is not written on paper, it is written in expectation, memory, identity, and emotional habit. It tells you what to notice before you notice it. It tells you what a silence means, what a delay means, what a glance means, what a closed door means, and until it is seen, it feels like life itself. Every morning, before your feet touch the floor, the script begins whispering. It may say, "Today will be difficult." It may say, "People always misunderstand me." It may say, "Money never stays. Love never lasts. Peace never comes without a price." And because this voice is familiar, you do not always question it. You mistake it for intuition. You mistake it for realism. But many times, it is only an old observer preparing to collapse today into yesterday before the day has even opened. This is why familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar freedom. The nervous system does not automatically choose what is highest. It often chooses what is known. If rejection is known, it scans for rejection. If struggle is known, it prepares for struggle. If disappointment is known, it waits for the moment when hope will be punished again. The script does not need to be true. It only needs to be repeated until your body treats it as reality. Then the world seems to confirm what the script already whispered. Look at the way a pattern enters your life. It rarely arrives screaming. It arrives wearing the face of normal. One relationship feels like the last one, but you call it coincidence. One opportunity closes in a familiar way, and you call it bad timing. One conversation repeats a wound you thought you had outgrown, and you call it proof that nothing changes. But beneath all of it, the invisible script is asking your attention to agree again. It says, "See, this is who you are. See, this is what always happens. See, this is the world you live in." And the moment you agree, even silently, the observer loop tightens, not because you are weak, not because you failed, but because agreement is energy. Agreement tells the field, "This is the meaning I accept. This is the identity I am available for. This is the probability I recognize as mine." The loop does not trap you with force. It traps you with familiarity. It keeps offering you scenes that look similar enough for the old observer to say, "I know this one," and then collapse it before a higher possibility can breathe. This is where many people become discouraged, because they think the repeating pattern means they have made no progress. But sometimes a pattern returns not to imprison you, but to show you exactly where the script still expects obedience. The return is not always regression. It can be revelation. The same kind of trigger appears, but now you catch it sooner. The same old fear rises, but now you do not believe it completely. The same familiar scene begins, but something in you whispers, "I do not have to finish this the old way." That whisper is the first crack in the holographic glass. For years, you may have been looking through reality as if it were solid, but now a fracture of light appears. Through that fracture, you see that the script was never the truth. It was an interpretation repeated until it became architecture. It built rooms inside your perception. It painted walls around your choices. It decided which doors looked possible and which doors looked forbidden. But if perception helped build the room, awakened perception can begin opening the wall. This is why awareness must become gentle and precise. If you attack the script, you give it more drama. If you hate the old observer, you keep identifying with the battle. The shift begins when you see the script without becoming hypnotized by it. You can say, "This is the abandonment story. This is the scarcity story. This is the story that says, I must earn love by shrinking. This is the story that says my future must resemble my past." Naming it does not make it stronger. Naming it removes the disguise. Once the disguise falls, you begin to notice how often reality was asking for a new response. The delay was not always rejection. Sometimes it was alignment taking longer than your fear preferred. The silence was not always abandonment. Sometimes it was space protecting you from repeating yourself. The closed door was not always punishment. Sometimes it was the field refusing to let your old identity choose another cage. The observer trapped in the script sees only loss. The awakened observer asks, "What is this moment freeing me from?" This question changes the frequency of your attention. It moves you out of victim observation and into conscious participation. You are no longer only scanning for proof that the old wound was right. You are listening for the deeper intelligence inside the moment. This does not make you passive. It makes you available. Available to receive a meaning your fear could not access. Available to perceive a pathway your old certainty would have dismissed. Available to let reality become a teacher instead of a courtroom, where your past keeps presenting evidence against your worth. But there is one hidden truth even more powerful than this. The invisible script is not only personal, it is also collective. You inherited parts of it from family, culture, survival, disappointment, and the unconscious observation of people around you. Some of the limits you have been obeying were never yours. They were handed to you before you knew how to question them. And now, as the quantum observer awakens, you are not only changing your own perception, you are withdrawing your energy from ancestral echoes, collective fear, and timelines that were never truly aligned with your soul. So do not rush this part. When an old belief rises, do not panic. When a familiar situation appears, do not assume you failed. When the script whispers, "This is how it has always been," answer with presence, not force. Say quietly, "I see the old script, but I do not sign it anymore. I observe from a higher awareness now." This simple refusal becomes a quantum interruption. The automatic collapse pauses. The field opens. A new meaning becomes possible. And this is the bridge into the next awakening. Once you stop reading the invisible script as truth, signs begin appearing with a different intensity. Reality stops feeling like repetition and starts feeling symbolic. You begin noticing the moments, messages, and confirmations that were always there, but hidden behind the old interpretation. The script loses authority. The observer gains sight. And what comes next is the unmistakable evidence that your quantum observer is already awake. You are no longer obeying the code. You are beginning to read it consciously, in real time. Once the invisible script begins to lose authority, reality starts speaking in a language you used to miss. The same world is still around you, but it no longer feels flat. A number repeats at the exact moment you ask a question. A phrase from a stranger lands like an answer. A cloud, a reflection, a delayed message, a sudden memory. All of it begins to feel arranged without feeling forced. You are not imagining more meaning than exists. You are finally noticing the layers of meaning your old observer was too busy surviving to perceive. This is the first sign that your quantum observer is awake. Reality begins to look symbolic. Not random. You do not need to chase signs or turn every detail into a superstition. That is not awakening. Awakening is quieter. It is the strange precision of timing. It is the feeling that a moment is looking back at you. It is the awareness that something can be ordinary on the surface and still carry a frequency underneath. The awakened observer does not become obsessed with signs. The awakened observer becomes available to the intelligence inside them. Maybe you have felt this while walking into a room. Before anyone speaks, your body already knows the emotional weather there. You sense tension behind smiles, warmth behind silence, dishonesty behind perfect words, and peace in places that do not look impressive. This is not judgment. This is quantum sensitivity. Your consciousness is beginning to read information before the mind turns it into analysis. The old observer needed evidence after something happened. The awakened observer feels the field before the event fully takes form. Another sign is the holographic glass effect. You look at one situation, but you can feel several layers moving behind it. A conversation is not just a conversation. It is a mirror of your boundary. A delay is not just a delay. It is a test of whether you will collapse into panic or remain open. A disappointment is not just a disappointment. It is a doorway asking whether you will repeat the old script or observe from a new center. You are seeing through the glass instead of only staring at its surface. This is why your life may feel more intense lately. Not because you are breaking, but because perception is becoming multi-dimensional. You hear what is said, and you also hear what is avoided. You see what appears, and you also sense what is trying to emerge. You notice when your body expands around one choice and contracts around another. These subtle signals were always present, but the old script used to drown them out. Now the volume of your inner knowing is rising. Then comes direct knowing. It arrives without drama, without explanation, without needing to prove itself. You suddenly know a path is complete. You know someone is not aligned with your next timeline. You know an opportunity is not as open as it looks, or that a simple invitation carries more destiny than your mind can explain. This knowing does not shout. It does not beg. It stands quietly in your chest like a small blue flame that cannot be argued away. But this is where discernment matters. Not every impulse is guidance. Not every fear is intuition. The awakened observer learns the difference between a contracted warning and a coherent knowing. Fear rushes. Knowing waits. Fear demands proof immediately. Knowing remains steady even when nothing outside has confirmed it yet. Fear makes your body shrink. Knowing makes your body quiet. This is why you are being trained not only to notice more, but to notice from a cleaner state. The clearer the observer, the clearer the signal. You may also notice that certain moments feel strangely scripted, but not in the old trapped way. This time, they feel like invitations. A book falls open to the sentence you needed. A person says the exact phrase you wrote in your journal. A problem repeats, but your reaction is different. And suddenly the whole scene changes direction. These are not proof that the universe is playing games with you. They are proof that your observation is becoming conscious enough to interrupt the automatic code. Technology may even feel responsive. Your feed mirrors a thought you did not speak. A song appears with the exact emotional answer you were avoiding. A message arrives just as you release the need to receive it. The point is not to become paranoid or dependent on external signs. The point is to recognize resonance. When your inner field becomes more coherent, your outer environment can seem to organize itself with unusual precision. The awakened observer does not worship the sign. The awakened observer reads the state that attracted the sign. Perhaps the deepest sign is how you relate to your own thoughts. You are no longer completely swallowed by them. A thought arises, and instead of instantly becoming it, you see it pass across awareness like weather across a vast sky. I am not enough appears, and something in you says, that is the old script. Nothing will change appears, and something in you says, that is the loop speaking. This distance is sacred. It means the observer has separated from the program, and once this separation happens, reality cannot hypnotize you the same way. You may still feel pain, but pain is no longer proof of identity. You may still face uncertainty, but uncertainty is no longer evidence of failure. You may still encounter silence, delay, contrast, and challenge, but they do not command your meaning as quickly as before. Something in you has learned to remain present before collapsing the moment. That presence is the doorway. That presence is the new lens. So if these signs are appearing, do not make them heavy. Do not turn awakening into another pressure to perform. You do not need to prove you are special. You do not need to decode every second of your day. Simply begin honoring the quiet intelligence that is returning to your perception. When a symbol appears, breathe. When knowing arises, listen. When the old script tries to name the moment too quickly, pause. Let the quantum observer look again. Often the second look is where the higher reality reveals itself, and what begins as subtle recognition will soon become stabilization. The signs are not the final destination. They are confirmation that your attention is waking up. They are the field tapping on the glass, saying, do you see it now? Do you see how alive this is? Do you see how much more is available when you stop observing from survival? The next stage is not chasing signs. It is learning how to hold the observer state steadily. So the higher probability does not appear once and disappear, but becomes the frequency you live from. And this is where embodiment begins. Now we arrive at the point where everything changes. The signs were never the final mystery. The invisible script was never the deepest prison. The real revelation is this: the observer is not simply watching reality unfold. The observer is selecting which version of reality becomes available to you experience, not by force, not by obsession, not by repeating affirmations while the body is still trembling in the old story. Selection happens through the state of consciousness you embody before the moment collapses into meaning. This is why two people can stand in the same room and live in two different worlds. One person sees rejection, another sees protection, one person sees delay, another sees alignment, one person sees a closed door and decides life is against them, another sees the same door and feels the field redirecting them towards something more coherent. The physical scene may be identical, but the observer is not. And because the observer is different, the reality that becomes available is different. This is the shock point most people are not ready to hear. You are not only responding to life, you are filtering life through the identity you are currently occupying. Every moment approaches you as possibility first. Then your observer state begins selecting. It selects through expectation. It selects through fear. It selects through trust. It selects through the nervous system, through memory, through the silent beliefs you carry about what you deserve, what is safe, and what is allowed to happen for someone like you. Imagine your consciousness as a quantum spotlight. Wherever it shines with emotional intensity, that possibility begins to take shape in your experience. If the spotlight keeps falling on abandonment, even neutral distance begins to look like proof. If it keeps falling on scarcity, even temporary uncertainty begins to feel like collapse. If it keeps falling on failure, Every small obstacle becomes a prophecy, but when the spotlight turns toward coherence, possibility, and inner authority, the field begins revealing pathways the old observer could not see. This does not mean you deny pain. It does not mean you pretend every event is pleasant. It means you stop handing your creative power to the first fearful interpretation that appears. The old observer rushes to collapse the moment because uncertainty feels dangerous. It wants a label immediately. It wants to call the silence rejection, the delay punishment, the challenge failure, the ending loss. But the quantum observer pauses long enough to ask, what else is available here? What version of reality am I selecting by the meaning I choose? That question is not mental decoration. It is a quantum interruption. It breaks the old collapse before it becomes your timeline again. Because the moment you assign meaning, you begin building reality around that meaning. If you call yourself powerless, you will unconsciously look for rooms where your power disappears. If you call yourself abandoned, you will scan for evidence that love is leaving. If you call yourself unlucky, you will organize your attention around every blocked path and miss the subtle opening beside it. But if you begin observing from the identity of someone guided, someone coherent, someone no longer available for the old script, the field has to meet a different observer. And this is where the hidden mistake becomes obvious. Many people try to observe a new life while still embodying the old self. They try to see abundance through a body addicted to lack. They try to see love through a nervous system prepared for betrayal. They try to see freedom through an identity still negotiating with the cage. This is why forcing does not work. The field does not respond to the mask you perform. It responds to the frequency you embody. You can say the perfect words and still select the old reality if your attention is rooted in panic. You can visualize a higher timeline and still collapse the lower one if your body believes the old script is safer. You can ask for change and still reject the exact doorway of change because it does not look familiar enough for the old observer to trust. This is not a failure. This is awareness. Once you see this mechanism, you stop blaming yourself and start reclaiming your observer state. You realize the shift is not about pretending to be fearless. It is about noticing where fear has been allowed to choose for you. It is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming conscious before the old identity signs another contract with the same reality. The awakened observer does not fight the old self. It simply stops letting the old self be the one who decides what everything means. Now picture reality as a quantum mirror. It does not only reflect what you want, it reflects the one who wants it. This is why desire alone is not enough. A desire held by a fragmented observer reflects fragmentation. A desire held by a desperate observer reflects distance. A desire held by a coherent observer begins to reflect pathways, timing, and support. The mirror is not punishing you. It is revealing the state from which you are approaching the field. This is the part that can feel uncomfortable at first, because it removes the illusion that you are waiting for reality to change before you become new. The quantum mirror shows the opposite. You become new, and reality begins reorganizing around the observer you have become. Not always instantly in the physical scene, but immediately in the field of meaning. The room feels different. The silence feels different. The obstacle feels different. And once the meaning changes, the choices available to you begin changing too. This is how timelines shift quietly before they shift visibly. First, you stop interpreting everything from the wound. Then you stop reacting as if the past is still in charge. Then you stop feeding attention into the version of reality that needs you to remain small. And suddenly, a new option appears. A conversation opens. A person responds differently. Your body does not contract around the same trigger. You choose a path you would have dismissed before. The external shift looks sudden, but the observer had already moved, and this is the point of no return. Once you realize that your observer state has been selecting reality, you cannot fully return to unconscious living. You may still forget sometimes. You may still react. You may still feel the old fear rise in your body. But now there is another awareness inside you watching the reaction. There is a quiet witness that says, "This is the old collapse, not the final truth." This is the old script, not my command. This is the old mirror, not my destiny. When that witness is active, the old reality loses its authority. It may still appear, but it no longer owns you. It may still speak, but you no longer have to answer with obedience. It may still offer the familiar identity, but you can feel that identity becoming too small for your field. That is the real miracle of the awakened observer. Not that life becomes instantly perfect, but that the old reality can no longer hypnotize you completely. So when a familiar scene appears again, understand what is happening. Reality is not punishing you with repetition. It is giving your observer a chance to select differently. The same silence appears, and you choose not to become abandonment. The same delay appears, and you choose not to become panic. The same uncertainty appears, and you choose not to collapse into the identity that needs control before it can feel safe. This is how selection changes, quietly, precisely. In the moment before meaning hardens, and now you can declare this inside yourself: I am not the old observer. I am not the wounded interpreter. I am not the automatic collapse of yesterday. I am the awareness that sees the pattern before it becomes my prison. I am the consciousness that can pause, breathe, and select from coherence. Once the observer wakes up, the old reality loses its throne. Once the observer becomes coherent, the field begins listening differently. But awakening the observer is not enough. A glimpse can open the door, but embodiment keeps it open. Many people have moments of clarity and then fall back into the old script because they do not know how to stabilize the new observer state in the body. They understand the truth for a moment, but their nervous system keeps choosing the familiar collapse. This is why the next stage matters so much. You are not only here to realize that observation selects reality. You are here to become stable enough to observe from the new reality again and again, until coherence becomes your natural frequency. Now that you understand the observer is selecting reality, the next step is not to become intense. It is not to monitor every thought, chase every sign, or pressure yourself to stay in a perfect spiritual state. That would only turn awakening into another performance. The quantum observer does not stabilize through force. It stabilizes through coherence. And coherence begins when your attention, your breath, your body, and your inner meaning are no longer fighting each other. This is where many people lose the shift. They experience a powerful realization, feel the field open, sense the old reality, losing authority, and then immediately try to control everything. They want to control the outcome, the timing, the person, the message, the sign, the proof. But control is not coherence. Control is often fear, dressed as focus. Coherence is different. Coherence is a calm inner alignment that says, I am present. I am awake. I do not need to collapse this moment from panic. Before you can observe a higher timeline, your body must feel safe enough not to choose the old one automatically. This is why the shift cannot remain only in the mind. Your thoughts may understand the truth, but if your nervous system still believes uncertainty means danger, it will keep selecting familiar patterns. The mind may say, I am free. The body may still say, prove it. Stabilization happens when the body begins to believe the new observer is safe. So begin with the simplest ritual, the 3-breath observer reset. Do not rush it. Do not perform it as a technique to impress the universe. Let it be a return. Place one hand gently on your chest, not to force emotion, but to signal presence. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw release. Let your eyes become less sharp, less hungry for proof. Then take the first breath and say inwardly, I see the old pattern. That first breath is recognition. You are not judging the pattern. You are not shaming yourself for having it. You are simply turning on the light. Maybe the pattern is fear of being ignored. Maybe it is the need to rush. Maybe it is the belief that if something pauses, it is falling apart. Whatever it is, breathe and see it. The moment you see the pattern clearly, you are no longer completely inside it. Then take the second breath and say, I release the old reaction, not the emotion, because emotions may still move through you, not the memory, because memory may still echo. You are releasing the automatic agreement that says this old reaction must become your identity again. You are letting the field know that the old collapse is not receiving full permission today. You are interrupting the script before it signs your name. Then take the third breath and say, I observe from coherence now. Let that sentence land slowly. Do not make it loud. Make it true. Feel the space between your ribs. Feel your body sitting in the present moment instead of leaning into the future for proof. This is the breath where the new observer steps forward. Not as a fantasy, not as a mask, but as the calm part of you that can stay open without becoming powerless. After these 3 breaths, ask one question. What else could this mean? This question is small enough to use in daily life and powerful enough to interrupt an entire timeline. When the message does not arrive, ask it. When the opportunity pauses, ask it. When someone's tone triggers the old wound, ask it. What else could this mean? The question does not demand an answer immediately. It simply keeps the field open long enough for a higher interpretation to enter. This is the practice of notice. Name. Neutralize. First, notice the reaction without becoming it. I feel my chest tightening. I feel the old fear rising. I feel the need to control the outcome. Then name the script. This is the abandonment story. This is the scarcity story. This is the story that says, I am not safe unless I know everything now. Finally, neutralize it by removing identity from it. This is a pattern moving through me. It is not who I am, what you can name. You no longer have to become. This is one of the most important keys in stabilizing the quantum observer. The old self survives by remaining unnamed. It hides inside phrases like, this is just me. This is just how I am. This is how life works. But when you name the pattern with compassion, the disguise dissolves. You stop calling a wound your personality. You stop calling a survival strategy your destiny. You stop calling a loop your truth. The new observer also has a posture, not a rigid posture, but an energetic one. The old observer leans forward, grabs, scans, predicts, prepares for impact. The coherent observer sits back into presence. It breathes lower. It listens vider. It lets the eyes soften, as if looking through reality instead of attacking its surface. This shift may seem simple, but the body understands it. Your posture tells the nervous system whether you are in threat or in trust. Try it now. Even for a moment, let your body stop reaching toward the next answer. Let your attention return from the imagined future. Let your chest become the center of observation instead of your anxious mind. Whisper inwardly, I do not need to force the field. I become coherent, and the field reveals what is next. This is not passivity. This is power without panic. This is participation without desperation. This is the observer stabilizing in the body. And do not underestimate the smallness of this practice. A timeline is not always changed by one massive decision. Sometimes it is changed by one breath that does not become panic, one pause that does not become self-sabotage, one moment where you do not text from fear, do not answer from defense, do not choose from lack, do not interpret silence as proof of abandonment. These tiny moments are not tiny in the quantum field. They are selection points. Each selection point teaches the field a new version of you, a version that can feel uncertainty without collapsing, a version that can desire without chasing, a version that can notice pain without turning it into prophecy. And the more often you return to this version, the more natural it becomes. Coherence stops being something you practice only when triggered. It becomes the frequency you carry into rooms, conversations, choices, and delays. This is how the quantum observer stabilizes, not through perfection, but through return. You will forget, and then you will return. You will react, and then you will notice. You will feel the old script rise, and then you will breathe before signing it. Every return strengthens the new observer. Every pause widens the field. Every coherent breath teaches your body that it no longer has to select the old reality to survive. And once this stability begins, life stops feeling like something you must force to prove you are safe. It becomes something you can meet, read, and reshape from presence. Once the quantum observer begins to stabilize, reality no longer needs to be forced into proof. This is difficult for the old self to accept, because the old self is always asking life to confirm safety before it relaxes. It wants the message, the sign, the apology, the result, the open door now. But the awakened observer understands something deeper. When you demand proof from panic, you are still observing absence. When you demand certainty before trusting, you are still selecting the timeline where trust has not arrived. This does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you become numb, passive, or detached from the desires in your heart. Desire is not the problem. Pressure is the distortion. Desire held in coherence opens the field. Desire, held in desperation, tightens the field. One says, I am ready to meet this possibility. The other says, I am incomplete unless this possibility arrives. And the field responds differently to each state, because the observer behind the desire is different. Look at the difference inside your own body. When desperation observes, the breath becomes shallow, the eyes search too quickly. The chest leans toward the future as if the present moment is not enough. You begin checking, refreshing, replaying, calculating. You ask, where is it? Why is it not here? What did I do wrong? That state may look like focus, but it is really fear trying to control collapse. It tells the field that the absence is more real than the possibility. Now feel the opposite. When coherence observes, the body softens without giving up. The breath drops lower. The eyes stop hunting and begin receiving. You still care. But your identity is not hanging from the outcome. You can want the door to open while remaining whole if it opens later. Differently. Or not at all. This is not weakness. This is quantum maturity. It means your observer is no longer bribing reality with tension. It is participating from wholeness. This is why you must stop asking reality to prove you are chosen before you behave as if your consciousness matters. You are not chosen because everything obeys you immediately. You are chosen because you have the capacity to remain awake when the old pattern tries to seduce you back into panic. You are chosen because you can pause before repeating the inherited reaction. You are chosen because you can observe the delay without turning it into rejection. Here is a simple practice for this stage. When you notice yourself trying to force proof, place your hand on your lower ribs and whisper, I return from pressure into presence. Then look at one object near you for 20 seconds. Do not name it. Do not analyze it. Do not use it as a sign. Just let it exist. Let your gaze become soft. Almost as if you are allowing reality to breathe without being judged. After 20 seconds, say inwardly, I allow a higher layer to reveal itself. Notice what happens inside you. The point is not whether the object changes. The point is that you change the way you meet what is in front of you. You stop attacking the moment for information. You stop squeezing reality for reassurance. You become spacious enough for subtle guidance to rise. This soft gaze is not empty. It is receptive observation. This practice trains the observer to participate without gripping. And this matters because gripping collapses possibility too quickly. When you grip, you reduce reality to only one acceptable outcome. When you reduce reality that much, you stop seeing the strange, elegant ways the field may be arranging support. You may ask for one door, while the field is preparing a hallway. You may beg for one person to answer, while life is clearing space for a truer connection. This is the shift from proof to participation. Instead of asking, where is my sign? You ask, what is this moment showing me about my observer state? Instead of asking, why has nothing changed? You ask, where am I still observing from the old script? Instead of asking, how do I make life obey me? You ask, how do I become coherent enough to recognize the door that is already opening? And when you live this way, the first external shifts are often gentle. Someone responds with less resistance than before. A conversation that usually spirals stays calm. A problem that once consumed you becomes manageable. You feel an impulse to take a different route. Wait one more day. Speak with more honesty. Or say nothing at all. These may seem small, but they are evidence that the field is meeting a different observer. The old self will try to dismiss these changes because they are not dramatic enough. It wants lightning. It wants instant proof. It wants the entire physical world to rearrange before it admits the observer has shifted. But the field often moves like dawn. First, the darkness thins. Then shapes become visible. Then warmth returns. Then the whole landscape reveals itself as if it had been waiting there all along. So do not despise the subtle. A softened reaction is a miracle. A peaceful pause is a miracle. A day where you do not chase from fear is a miracle. A moment where you let silence remain open instead of turning it into abandonment is a miracle. The first miracle is not that life changes in front of you. The first miracle is that you stop feeding the version of you that cannot receive change. This is surrender in its most powerful form. Not giving up. Not lowering your desire. Not pretending you do not care. Surrender is the moment you stop using your nervous system as a weapon against uncertainty. It is the moment you say, I can remain open without grabbing. I can desire without collapsing. I can listen without demanding. I can participate with reality without treating every pause as proof that I have been forgotten. And as this surrender deepens, reality begins to feel less like an opponent and more like a living field. You stop standing outside life, asking it to prove your worth. You begin standing inside life as a conscious participant. You notice timing. You notice energy. You notice when a path opens easily and when another path requires you to abandon yourself. You are not passive. You are precise. You are not forcing. You are listening with power. This is the doorway into the collective shift. Because a stabilized observer does not change only personal experience. Your coherence becomes a signal in the wider field. When you stop forcing reality to prove you are safe, your presence becomes safer for others too. They may not understand why they breathe easier near you. They may not know what changed. But the field knows. A new observer has entered the room. The moment a new observer enters the room changes. Even before anyone understands why. This is where your personal shift becomes collective. You may have believed this awakening was only about your own life, your own healing, your own timeline. But consciousness never awakens in isolation. Every time one person stops observing from fear, the field around them receives a new instruction. Every time one person refuses to confirm the old script, the collective script weakens by a fraction of light. Your coherence is not private. It is a signal. This is why your presence has begun affecting people differently. Some feel calmer around you without knowing why. Some open up and reveal truths they have hidden for years. Some become uncomfortable. Not because you are doing anything wrong, but because your field no longer agrees with their unconscious patterns. The awakened observer does not need to preach. The awakened observer radiates a different permission. Your nervous system becomes evidence that another way of existing is possible. Think of humanity as a vast field of lights. For a long time, many lights have been dimmed by survival, fear, repetition, and inherited limitation. People have been observing through the same collective lens: scarcity, separation, urgency, competition, distrust. And because enough observers kept confirming that world appeared solid. But now, one by one, certain lights are switching on, not through noise, not through domination, through coherence, through presence, through the quiet refusal to keep collapsing reality into the same old fear. This is what collective awakening actually means. It is not everyone suddenly believing the same idea. It is not a mass performance of spirituality. It is the gradual stabilization of observers who can see beyond the inherited script. When enough people observe from wholeness instead of survival, the field of possibility available to humanity changes. A new emotional climate becomes possible. New conversations become possible. New choices become possible. New futures become visible. Not because they were created from nothing, but because enough consciousness finally became coherent enough to perceive them. You may have felt this invisible network already. Certain people appear in your life with impossible timing. A conversation with someone you barely know confirms something your soul has been feeling for months. You find yourself drawn to voices, teachings, places, and communities that speak the language your inner world has been waiting to hear. This is not random attraction. This is resonance. The quantum observer inside you is recognizing other observers who are waking up across the field. And yet, this is where humility matters. You are not here to convince everyone. You are not here to drag people into awareness before they are ready. You are not here to argue with those who are still loyal to the old script. The moment you turn awakening into superiority, you step back into separation. The moment you need others to agree with your perception, you give away the very coherence you came here to embody. Your role is not to force the field. Your role is to become a stable point of light within it. Some people will not understand your shift, and that is okay. Some will call your calmness distance. Some will call your boundaries selfish. Some will call your new perceptions strange. Let them. You do not need to shrink your awareness to make unconscious patterns comfortable. But you also do not need to fight. The quantum observer knows that truth does not require aggression to remain true. Presence is enough. Consistency is enough. The way you live becomes the transmission. This is the deeper meaning of morphic resonance. When one being stabilizes a new pattern, it becomes easier for others to access that pattern. When one nervous system learns peace after years of fear, peace becomes more available in the field. When one person breaks the observer loop, the possibility of loop breaking becomes less foreign to the collective. You are not saving the world by carrying it. You are serving the world by no longer feeding the frequency that keeps it asleep. This does not mean you must be perfect. The collective shift does not need flawless people. It needs honest observers. People who can notice fear without worshiping it. People who can feel pain without turning it into identity. People who can face uncertainty without collapsing into inherited panic. People who can return, again and again, to coherence. Every return matters. Every breath matters. Every time you choose presence over reaction, you add one more signal of stability to the human field. And maybe this is why your path has felt so intense. You were not only healing personal wounds, you were learning how to stop transmitting them unconsciously. You were not only breaking family patterns, you were learning how not to pass them forward. You were not only awakening for yourself, you were becoming a living interruption in a chain of repeated observation. Through you, something old can end. Through your coherence, something new can begin. Feel the hope inside that, not pressure. Hope. You do not have to fix humanity. You do not have to carry every unconscious person on your back. You do not have to become a perfect example of enlightenment. You only have to keep returning to the observer who sees clearly, breathes deeply, and refuses to collapse the future into the fear of the past. That return is enough to change the field you touch. Because when enough observers stop confirming the old world, a new world becomes easier for everyone to see. This is the greatest possibility hidden inside your awakening. Your shift is not isolated. Your perception is not meaningless. Your coherence is not small. You are part of a larger movement of consciousness, learning to notice reality like never before. And as this collective observer wakes up, humanity begins, remembering that reality was never fixed, stone. It was always living glass, waiting for consciousness clear enough to see through it. Before we close this transmission, there is one more layer your observer needs to receive. The collective awakening does not arrive only through huge revelations, dramatic visions, or impossible signs. It often arrives through the smallest ordinary moments where you refuse to participate in the old frequency. You answer with patience instead of defense. You choose silence instead of explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding. You take one breath before reacting. You let a door close without deciding your future has disappeared. These choices look invisible to the world, but in the field, they are luminous signals of freedom. Every awakened observer becomes a quiet correction to the collective pattern, not by arguing, not by proving, not by demanding that others see what you see, but by no longer lending your attention to the same fear. When you stop feeding the old script inside yourself, you stop broadcasting it into the rooms you enter. Your family feels it. Your friendships feel it. Even strangers feel it in ways they cannot explain. Something about you becomes less reactive and more spacious. That spaciousness gives other nervous systems permission to soften, without knowing why it feels safe around you now, too. This is the hidden service of your awakening. You do not need a platform, a title, or a perfect spiritual language to affect the field. The field reads coherence, not status. It reads the breath you choose when fear offers its old command. It reads the boundary you hold without hatred. It reads the compassion you give without abandoning yourself. And it reads the moment you look at reality without immediately shrinking it into yesterday. Each of these moments becomes an instruction. A human being can meet uncertainty and still remain open without collapsing back into the old dream again. So when this video ends, do not search for a grand sign that proves everything changed. Notice the ordinary proof. Notice how you pause. Notice how you breathe. Notice how quickly you recognize the script. Notice how reality feels slightly more alive because you are no longer looking through dead perception. This is how the new world enters. Not as noise, but as awareness. One observer wakes, then another, then another. The field brightens quietly, and somewhere inside the collective, a future once considered impossible begins to feel natural, near, and already listening through the eyes that you opened today. Now take a slow breath and look back at the path you have just walked through. You began with the strange feeling that reality was no longer flat, that the world around you had become sharper, more symbolic, more alive. Then you saw that you were never merely looking at life. Your attention has weight, your perception has direction, your observer state has been shaping the meaning, frequency, and possibility of what you experience. You recognized the invisible script, the quiet program that tried to name every delay, silence, trigger, and closed door before your awakened awareness could respond. You saw that familiar pain is not always truth. Sometimes it is only repetition wearing the mask of reality. And once you named that script, it could no longer command your field in secret. Then the signs became clearer. Reality began speaking through timing, resonance, symbols, direct knowing, and the quiet language of the body. You learned that signs are not something to chase. They are confirmations that your attention is waking up. The purpose is not obsession. The purpose is perception clean enough to receive what was always present. And then came the deeper revelation. The observer is not only watching reality, the observer is selecting it. The meaning you assign, the identity you embody, the state you return to before reaction hardens. These are selection points. Once you understood this, the old reality lost its throne. It may still appear, but it no longer owns your consciousness. This is why stabilization matters. You practiced the 3-breath observer reset. I see the old pattern. I release the old reaction. I observe from coherence now. You learn to notice, name, and neutralize the script without attacking yourself. You learned that coherence is not control. It is presence without panic, desire without desperation, participation without force. And then you softened the gaze. You stopped asking every moment to prove your worth. You stopped squeezing reality for reassurance. You began to understand that surrender is not giving up. It is refusing to turn uncertainty into a weapon against yourself. The first miracle was not that life changed instantly. The first miracle was that you stopped feeding the version of you that could not receive change. And finally, your awakening widened beyond the personal. You saw that a coherent observer becomes a signal in the collective field. Your peace gives permission. Your presence interrupts inherited fear. Your return to awareness adds one more light to the human network. You are not here to convince everyone. You are here to embody the frequency that makes a new world easier to see. Now, place one hand over your heart, and let this declaration seal the shift. I no longer observe from the old script. I no longer collapse the unknown into fear. I no longer give my power to the first reaction of the wounded self. I observe from coherence. I notice reality like never before. I allow the higher layer to reveal itself through my presence, my breath, and my awakened attention. If this message reached something real inside you, type observer in the comments, not as a word, but as a signal to your own field. Right. I observe from coherence now. If you are ready to stop reading from the invisible script and begin seeing through the quantum lens, and remember this, you did not find this message by accident. Reality used this message to remind you who is watching. The lens is open. The observer is awake. Your shift is irreversible when you choose to see. Stay coherent. Stay present. A new reality is already learning how to meet your gaze, and it begins now here.